So, speaking of the culture and workplace culture and white supremacy, last week I saw a post on social media, and to be honest, I do not remember word for word what that post said, but it was something along the lines of how often companies bring people like you and me in to do inclusion work or equity work in name only, while holding tight with their fingernails to the sort of colonistic mindset that has brought them to the point of needing our assistance in the first place. So we're supposed to come in and make all of the marginalized folks feel better and maybe even help the people who work with the marginalized folks to understand what microaggressions are and what not to say so you don't piss anybody off. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the next step of that work, if you want it to be truly inclusive, is to start asking questions about your organization. Who in our policies, in our board makeup, in our leadership makeup, in our recruitment efforts, who do we appear to be prioritizing over other groups? Are we going to HBCUs to recruit folks in as equal numbers as we're going to colleges that have large white populations and colleges that have large Hispanic populations? Are we, looking for board members from organizations that are mostly of a certain socioeconomic status, or are people mostly bringing in their friends who they know socially to be on that board? Or are you actually looking at maybe trade organizations or professional organizations that have people with different types of diversity? How are you ensuring that you have enough gender difference in your workplace? And that's not just two
Mhm.
genders, that's more than two genders. What are we doing in our organizations to make space for everyone, not just to respond to hurt once hurt is done? I know you've done a lot on this, Eric.
Your work is reminding me, what you're saying is reminding me of a cartoon that I saw a long time ago, where, somebody who looks like some kind of CEO somewhere is talking to his executive assistant, and he said, "Bring me a whole lot of people who don't look like me but think exactly like me." It's that kind of surfacey kind of thing, and what it brings to mind is like, look, I'm not going to speak for Black people. You can do that in a moment if you want to. I will speak for the LGBT population. Um, we know how to get along. We know how to sublimate our true selves to make everyone else around us comfortable. We've been doing that our whole lives. We can do that at work. No one needs to teach me how to walk into a mostly straight space and make sure that the straight folks are comfortable. And so and I'm sure that if I were to say the same thing to most Black professionals, yes, they know what not to say about their own Blackness and their own lived experience to make sure that everyone around them is just real, real comfortable with who they are. But you're right. Does that get you to the next level? Are we then taking advantage of the diversity that exists in our organization? Even to mention bringing more in, but let's say you do have a big effort to say we want more Black and Hispanic people to work here. But then when you get here, we want you to do everything you can to make sure that the white people, especially the white people in charge, are always super comfy around you. We're not taking advantage of the brain trust that we've brought in, and it just, the other thing is just a very capitalist mindset of, if your competitor across the street can make them feel more welcome as their entire selves at work, they will eventually get that talent and
Oh,
you will be left
absolutely, they
without it.
will. We
And so
also
it's just an invitation for a revolving door where no one really sticks around for long.
100%, 100%. And the other thing that companies are not understanding with this is that it's not simply about creating a space where people don't feel offended. It's also looking at other ways in which you are doing business to look for ways in which you are being inclusive of people there
Hmm.
as well. For instance, if there is time out of the regular 9 to 5 schedule and you are planning something that people must attend. Is this in a space that is accepting of all people? Is it in such a traditionally white space that your employees of color are going to feel comfortable because they're the only people who look like them at the establishment? Or maybe does the establishment have a history of being very exclusionary of certain groups? Is that space ADA compliant? And is it accessible for people who need to take public transportation? Is it accessible for people who have mobility issues? Well, you have to climb a large set of stairs in order to get to the event that the organization is
Mhm.
hosting. If you're planning to do it outside of 9 to 5, also, are you taking into account your working parents, especially single working parents, but working parents in general, who may need babysitting in order to attend? I was talking to a friend of mine a couple days ago about our state delegate, who is the amazing Robin Lewis, our state delegate to Annapolis, or one of our people in our wonderful delegation. Robin is the truth. She is this incredibly smart, incredibly community-minded sister who has just been part of so many wonderful development opportunities in East Baltimore, and especially in her part of East Baltimore. I mean, she's always, since I've known her, and I've known her for over 20 years, she's always been kind of known as like a super neighbor. Like that woman, if there wants something done in the community, you go to Robin, you get Robin involved. She's phenomenal. Robin is a regular person like we are. She has to work for a living as we do. She doesn't have an incredibly high paying profession like lawyer or CEO of a company. She has to be able to make a living the same way anybody else does. But she also has to be in Annapolis, Maryland, X number of weeks, months, whatever out of the year as a person who's participating as a state delegate in our legislature. How do you find a job as a regular person that allows you that much time off to also be able to serve your state? Oh, by the way, and now my poor friend Robin has been doged because she did find that perfect example, I mean, that perfect employment opportunity, but it was with USAID.
Mm.
And we know what's happened there. Takes me to another friend of mine, another sister who was a delegate in District 13 here in Baltimore. Shannon got the job, as a lot of the delegates at that point were doing once they were elected, said, I'm not going to work a second job because I want to give all of my attention to Baltimore City. We all, as voters, found that very admirable. Well, if you are the mom of a young child, even if your husband is working, childcare is expensive. She ended up having to, sometimes, actually a lot of times when her daughter was a baby, take her daughter with her. And she was in her office with her while she did her work.
Mm.
Actually, to be honest, I did that for a little while when I had my second daughter. A lot of mothers do that. But she did. She was able to. There are no rules against it. So she got her work done. She represented her district well, and she did it with her baby on her knee. Pardon me, which, by the way, also is what Black women have been expected to do since we've been in this country. Well, the Baltimore Sun wrote a piece about it, or one of the newspapers wrote a piece about it. And it wasn't a hit job, it was a nice piece. But apparently, people came in hot, calling her a welfare queen because she's, accepting public money for, while having her child with her, or telling her that she's not doing her job correctly because how can you do, your child should be in daycare. The whole point is that daycare is so expensive that you can't be an elected official, make that your full-time job, and afford daycare at the same time. The point being that neither of those jobs, neither of those positions, I'll put elected positions, state delegate or city council member, clearly neither was built for working class people, for women, or people who are caregivers to children, or I would say elders for that matter. It really shows how our systems were built for
Yeah.
white cisgender white men who don't have an obligation of childcare until companies and organizations, colleges, nonprofits can look at who their leadership structures are built for, really
Yeah.
clear-eyed look at it. Only then can they start to and acknowledge that. Only then can they start to figure out how to make that leadership more inclusive so that more people can participate
Hmm.
who have been barred from being able to participate in the past. And that goes across racial, socioeconomic, gender lines, everything.